Okay, time for a new video. Welcome back to my channel, or hello if you're new. This is yet another Eurovision related video here on my channel, and today I am going to be filming the first in what I hope will be a little series of videos on my channel over the next couple of weeks, if not the next couple of months, where I focus on one country and one country only and talk about everything to do with their entries over the past decade. So that's 2015 to 2025. I'll talk about the artists a little bit, their performances at Eurovision itself a little bit, and I'll also be roughly ranking whatever country's entries it is as the video progresses as well. As always, you're welcome to let me know your thoughts on anything I discuss in today's video by leaving a comment down below, and as always there are links in the description to my other social media pages. Check them out if you so wish. Today I am going to be focusing on Norway because that's the first country I thought of when I came up with this video series idea some days ago. So of course do feel free to let me know your ranking of Norway's entries over the past decade by leaving that in the comments section. So let's roll back the years to begin with and focus on 2015, the Vienna staged competition. Of course, it's very likely to be Vienna again next year. But back in 2015, Norway were represented by a double act, Mørland and Deborah Scarlett. That's Kjetil Mørland, who's now in his early 40s. He's written or co-written a whole bunch of songs for other artists in MGP, including Attention, which won MGP 2024 Ulrika. He's also been involved with one or two tracks in Estonia's Eesti Laul over the past couple of years, and he has tried to represent Norway by himself since 2015. Deborah Scarlett, on the other hand, who I think is 30-something now. She's 31, from Basel, and she makes music under the name Red Moon. She was on Norway's version of The Voice in 2013, and she has released a few EPs over the past few years. So this song, A Monster Like Me, it's pretty much a straightforward ballad. It does build up towards the end. It's very mysterious lyrically. I did something terrible in my early youth. Did we ever find out what that was? How much truth is there to this song? How personal is it to the performers? I don't really know. But it's definitely very beautifully done. It was very simplistically performed at MGP and indeed at the ESC. There really didn't need to be much to this at all, both in white outfits. He was there to begin with this very simple piano melody in the background, of course, and then she appeared with this sort of long ginger hair, and then they just sang together. The camera panned around them on stage in Vienna for a little while. It was really beautifully done. And the music video for this track is very interesting as well. It's sort of like a dinner party gone wrong. The two of them are looking longingly at each other, from what I remember, but everybody else is throwing food everywhere, smashing plates, that sort of thing. Very unusual, but quite effective. Anyway, this finished 4th in the semi-final, second semi-final, 123 points. 8th in the final, 102 points. Now, I don't have the specificities of the results in front of me, but what I do remember is that this did far better in the jury vote than the public vote, which is perhaps no surprise. A lot of people listening to this on the night 10 years ago probably thought that this was somewhat dull, whereas the jurors could appreciate it a great deal more. Performed entirely in English, I can tell you it's absolutely one of my favourite Norwegian entries that they've ever had at the Eurovision Song Contest, so I wouldn't be surprised if this is in my personal top 3 Norwegian tracks over the past 10 years. It is my number 2 of the 2015 contest, coincidentally behind another male-female double act in the form of Elina and Stig for Estonia. But we move on to 2016, and this was a rare Norwegian entry that did not make the final. That has barely happened since the semi-final format was introduced in 2004 in Istanbul. Back in 2016, it was Agneta Saba, born in July 1994, so she turns 31 very soon. She was part of the Black Sheeps, who were the runners-up in MGP in 2011 with Dance Tonight, and she was also part of that group when they won MGP Junior in 2008 with a song in Norwegian and Northern Sami, Oro Jeska Biena, which is quite catchy, it has to be said. It roughly translates as Shut Up Dog. She was also on the 10th series of Norway's version of Dancing with the Stars, or Strictly Come Dancing, which she went on to win. She's released one EP back in 2021 and doesn't seem to have made much music over the past few years. But what I remember is that she won MGP in 2016 somewhat comfortably, which is in contrast to 2015, A Monster Like Me only won by a couple of thousand votes. Anyway, Icebreaker, the name of her track, it finished 13th in the second semi-final in Stockholm with 63 points. I didn't mind this at the time, but I've barely listened to it over the past couple of years. I don't really remember how popular this song was at the time, but I certainly was fairly shocked that she didn't make the final, and I think a fair few other people were shocked as well. It really is a bit of a jarring song, though. It's almost like 3 tracks stitched together into what I assume the songwriters hoped would be a cohesive whole, but it doesn't really hit top gear at all. The tempo changes quite a bit as well, from the verses to the chorus and back again. She looked beautiful on stage, white outfit. Can't really remember if she had anybody else on stage with her. There was an icy look to proceedings. I certainly remember that much, and vocally I thought she was okay. Some flashing strobe effects as well. But on the whole, I think that this didn't leave much of an impression at all. It simply was a bit too cold, and I think people just couldn't really connect with this a great deal. I believe Agnieszka had some anxiety-related issues around that time as well, so whether that played a part into the result or not, I don't really know. Let's not be too harsh about that. But yeah, a real shame, because this had a lot of promise, and I don't think it really hit top gear at all. Looking at my personal ranking of this track, it is a personal finalist for me, and it is my number 12 of the 2016 contest, but that could change when I eventually get around to re-ranking all of the contests of my lifetime. Anyway, 2016, there we go, just write it there. Moving on to 2017, this was a return to form for Norway. They were represented by Joust, that's Joachim with Steen, who's also a music producer. He's 35 from Trondheim, and he's worked with a whole bunch of other musicians, including Christian Kostov, who finished second for Bulgaria that year, and Manel Navarro, who represented Spain that year. There's also uncredited vocals from Alexander Wallman, who was the guy front and centre. He's 39, has tried to represent Norway since, and released a couple of songs in 2021, 2022 and 2023. Anyway, this song, Grab the Moment. Don't really remember a lot of people hyping this one up at all, but in the semi-finals, 5th with 189 points isn't bad, and then 10th in the final with 158 points. Really quite impressive. Of course, you had our leading man front and centre, quite casually dressed, sort of bopping about a little bit on the spot, and then you had the guy off to one side with the light-up mask, banging the electro drums or whatever it was. A sort of pink-looking performance from what I remember. If anything, this is a bit of an underrated gem. I really don't see too many people talk about this song these days. In the final, 15th in the public vote, 6th in the jury vote. Wow, that's quite generous. I didn't realise it was quite that high. I must have forgotten about it. But yes, 10th overall, 158 points. A pretty catchy number, certainly somewhat radio-friendly. But yeah, 10th place for this. Pretty impressive. But I am going to put it here, actually, for the time being. And I can tell you that Grab the Moment is my number 14 of the Kyiv 2017 contest. What was the situation with MGP that year? I can't even remember who else was involved. Oh, I don't want to do that. Let me do this. Here we go. Oh, yes. Ulrika was up against Joust in 2017. Yes, indeed. Anyway, Grab the Moment won over Ammunition with Wrecking Crew. That was more of a rock metal type entry by 6,000 or so votes. Anyway, getting back on track, in 2018 we had Alexander Rybak coming back because he just couldn't stay away, and he had That's How You Write a Song, although a lot of people thought that this wasn't how you should write a song. He somehow won the second semi-final. It always seems to be the second semi-final that Norway are in. But anyway, he won the second semi-final in Lisbon with 266 points. Very generous if you ask me. In the final, a different story. Just a few days later, 15th place, 144 points. What happened? Was the semi-final performance a hell of a lot stronger? I don't really know. I think he was unwell, actually, for the grand final, but don't quote me on that. Did people just realise over the space of 48 hours or so that this song really wasn't that up to scratch? I don't know. Anyway, that's how you write a song. It's fairly catchy, it's somewhat enjoyable, but it is also really basic and quite silly, and I don't think this was at all the entry that Norway should have sent that year. He won MGP, in my opinion, on name alone. The runner-up was a young woman called Rebecca with a song called Who We Are, a song coincidentally written by Mørland, who I mentioned earlier on, and I think that would have been a far stronger effort in my opinion. This, on the other hand, it's just really quite bland. It's not as enjoyable as it should be. He had a couple of backing singers and dancers off to one side. He was somewhat smartly dressed. Vocally, he sounded okay. There was some on-screen graphics at the start, kicking a football. He sort of interacted with that. It was fine. 15th place in the final. Fair enough. And I don't really have much else to say about it. If we take a look at my actual ranking, my personal ranking, Norway is my number 18 of the 2018 contest. There we go. A mid-table finish for the returning champion, who, for the record, never seems to age. He's 39, from Belarus. He's released several albums, albeit not for ages, and he did live in America up until last year, apparently. So there you go. Moving on to 2019, and this was a huge success story. It was Kano or Kano with Spirit in the Sky. You had the two guys and the woman, and their specific names, if I load it up here, are Tom Hugo, who's tried to represent Norway as a soloist, Fred Buljo, and Alexandra Rotan, who has teamed up in MGP in the past with Stella Mwangi, the 2011 representative. Anyway, they've been making music for a number of years. They've released one album which charted at number 30 in Norway. That's not terribly great. And they have had other MGP entries as well, including Monument and Dam Diggy Da. But Spirit in the Sky is by far their strongest effort, if you ask me. This won the public vote. It was always a possibility. It's a real crowd pleaser. But I think at the time, we were expecting the Netherlands, Australia, Switzerland to maybe win the public vote, but no, it was Norway with 291 points. The juries, on the other hand, weren't really in the mood for this bop, ranking Spirit in the Sky 18th with 40 points. Nevertheless, Norway still finished 6th in the end with 331, having finished 7th in the semi-finals with 210 points. Really very enjoyable. You had a sort of swirling cosmos scene on the backdrop, that fairly small stage in Tel Aviv. The crowd were loving it, and it's got real energy, real momentum. Like I said a moment ago, a real crowd pleaser. I've just realised that I haven't put 2018 down here, so we'll do that. And 2019 I am going to put there, I think, for the time being. Lovely stuff. Spirit in the Sky, still so popular to this day, and I would not be surprised if Kano come back to MGP sooner rather than later. We now move on to the cancelled because of COVID competition in 2020, and the winner of MGP that year was, by a somewhat narrow margin, I remember at the time, as the results were coming in, getting a little bit nervous about this one, it was Ulrika, of course, with Attention. An absolute vocal powerhouse. She's 29. She has appeared on Norway's version of the Great British Bake Off. She's also appeared on Norway's version of Dancing with the Stars, but didn't make the final. She is married and has a son. And I haven't looked at her Instagram page for a good while, but I think most of the recent photographs have been her and her husband and her son, which is perhaps no surprise. So music has taken a bit of a back seat over the past year or so. She did come back with Honestly in 2023, but she didn't win MGP that year. And of course, she did have that entry in MGP in 2017, which didn't win either. She's released one album, which was a Christmas album back in 2020. She's so great, so likeable, very enthusiastic. I remember she started putting up vlogs on her YouTube channel. I think this was late 2020, and you could see behind the scenes as to what was happening with the broadcaster and everything with regards to Eurovision being cancelled, and I hope that she starts doing vlogs again at some point. Will she come back to MGP? I certainly hope so. Attention is a great ballad. It's a big, old-fashioned but really well executed power ballad. She was in this gold dress, the falling rain pyrotechnics. It would have done well at Eurovision, no doubt about it in my mind, had the contest gone ahead in Rotterdam that year. So well done. A really beautiful, effective ballad, and it's going to go here. It was my winner of the 2020 contest. I should say Spirit in the Sky was my number 3, I think. Yes, of the 2019 competition. Getting back on track, Tix is next with Fallen Angel. This finished 18th in Rotterdam in 2021 with 75 points. He only just qualified 10th in semi-final 1 that year with 115 points. Controversially ahead of Croatia, who were top 10 with the jury and the public, but because of the way the voting works, or worked back then, whatever you want to say, Croatia missed out, Norway went through. He had wings on his back, a white outfit, very heavenly looking, very angel looking, I suppose. A bit of a blue colour scheme. I think he had backing singers with him on stage as well. Chains, if I remember. It's been a long time since I saw the performance, you'll have to forgive me. Vocally, he was okay. This is a somewhat schmaltzy, slow burn of a track. He was up against Kano in the super final, I think. Can't quite remember. I'll have to check that. And yeah, I was sort of expecting him to win because this song was gaining a bit of momentum at just the right time, and he is a pretty big star in Norway, it must be said. I'm just taking a look here. Yes, Kano or Kino had 281,000 votes. Tix had 380,000 votes. His real name is Andreas Haukeland. He is 32, 2 months younger than me. He's released 2 albums, albeit not for a few years, and he's released loads of singles, many of which have charted very highly in his homeland. He usually teams up with other musicians, and his genres are pop and EDM. Yeah, this for me, 18th in the final, I think was about right. There wasn't really that much excitement about this song by the time Eurovision came around. I thought the performance was fine. He did a pretty solid job. That bit where he removed his glasses at the end was quite touching. He does have Tourette syndrome, which is where the name Tix comes from, because of course you have involuntary movements called tics if you have Tourette's. Anyway, getting back on track. Yeah, this is fine, just not terribly memorable, I would say. And in my opinion, somewhat schmaltzy. In terms of my personal ranking, Tix is my number 19 of the 2021 contest. Yeah, not terribly stand out, but 2022's entry, I would say, certainly was for Norway. This was Subwoofer with Give That Wolf a Banana. And I remember doing my reaction video to the snippets of the songs on my channel back in 2022, and I thought this was dreadful. And then it grew on me, and I was not surprised this won MGP whatsoever. And then at Eurovision, I thought the performance was fairly enjoyable. It's not one of my big favourites, but I certainly don't mind it at all. This finished 10th in the final in Turin, 182 points, and 6th in the semi-finals, 177 points. Of course, we do now know who Subwoofer are, because they revealed themselves during the final of MGP 2023. Ben Adams, the lead singer of A1, who've had success here in the UK, and A1 themselves were the runners-up in MGP back in 2010, I think it was. Anyway, he's from Ascot, which has been on television recently because of the Royal Ascot racehorsing. And then Gorte Ormsson. who has been in MGP as a soloist before, got quite a high-pitched voice. He was also part of this double act. They're still together, apparently. They've released a whole bunch of songs over the years, including Having Grandma Here for Christmas, Give That Wolf a Romantic Banana, and I Think I Killed Rudolph. So there you go. Obviously, there they were with their big masks on, all somewhat comical, I guess. Smartly dressed otherwise. You had the DJ behind them doing his thing. You had dancers, pretty slick choreography, I guess. Fairly catchy, not to be taken too seriously. The result in the end was as expected. It was never really a serious challenger to win. Norway in 2022, my number 17 of that year's competition. Don't really have much else to say about it. Who were they up against in the MGP final? Was it that boy band? Can't quite remember. Let me take a look here. Norway. Yes, here we are. MGP 2022. Yes, they were. They were up against North Kid. So really, it was a foregone conclusion. This was always going to come out on top. Anyway, moving on to 2023, another female vocal powerhouse. This was Alessandra, who's still making music now. She released a new single very recently. She's been on tour, including here in the UK, and I'd love to see her at some point. Queen of Kings. Alessandra is 22, from Italy. She was on Norway's version of The Voice, but was eliminated somewhat early on. She's released one EP, numerous singles over the past few years, including Pretty Devil, Bad Bitch, and Narcissist. Toscana is her most recent single. She's great, very likeable. I remember watching a lot of videos of her giving interviews and that sort of thing back in early 2023. She was just so enthusiastic about the whole experience. Queen of Kings is a very fierce number. She was dressed in this sort of warrior outfit, which changed slightly from MGP to Eurovision. She beat Ulrika in MGP that year. She won very convincingly in the end. It was a bit of a landslide victory. This was 5th in Liverpool, 268 points, 6th in the semi-final, 102 points. Of course, the juries came back for the final. The juries weren't keen on this, and I believe that might be because her jury performance on the Friday night was a little bit shaky. It was stronger on the Saturday night when the public could vote, and that's why maybe there was a bit of a discrepancy between the jury and the public that year with regards to this entry. But it's really catchy. You had dancers with lights waving about in their hands. It was a fairly dark-looking performance on the whole, though. And then at the end, she strutted forwards, looking, really quite majestic and fierce and powerful. And she sang very well, that sort of piercing note in the final third. Absolutely tremendous. This is my number 2 of the 2023 contest. Yes, indeed. Lovely. Something very different in 2024. We had a band. This was Gåta with Ulveham, and this finished last, Norway's first entry in their own language for a very, very long time, since 2006, and nobody gave it much attention whatsoever. Absolutely disgraceful behaviour. 16 points for this top quality effort, a sort of otherworldly rock metal type track, which builds up and builds up to a sort of frantic, cathartic finale, lights flashing everywhere, the guitarist jumping about. It's all fairly dramatic stuff, but it was so well done, and Europe just couldn't give a shite. In the semi-final, 10th with 43 points. Gåta, which means riddle, they've been making music since the late 90s. They have split up or gone on hiatus a couple of times. Folk rock, Norwegian folk, folk metal, electronica are their genres. They've released loads of albums, including one that went to number 1 in their homeland, and many singles over the years as well. I don't really have a great deal to say about this because I've spoken about that song numerous times on my channel since it won MGP back in 2024. This was just so great. It was so different. It was so welcome. And this style of music is not everybody's cup of tea. Hello, this has gone cold. Disgusting. Dear me. Not everybody's cup of tea at all. But I think a lot of people appreciated Norway sending something in their own language and doing something maybe a little bit unexpected. Sadly, the result was just a crushing disappointment. This is my number 2 of last year's Malmö staged competition. and I haven't been ranking these as I've been going along. What year did I get up to? 2020. 2021. Oh, what year is that? Oh, right. 2021, I'm going to put here. 2022, I'm going to put probably there for the time being. This is a very rough ranking, like I said at the start of this video. And then 2023, I'm going to put here. And then 2024, well, as much as I like Ulverham, I haven't really listened to it much since last year. So I'm going to put Ulverham there for the time being. And then we have this year's entry by young Kyle Alessandro. This was Norway playing it safe. MGP this year was really weak. Probably the weakest Norwegian national selection for many years, in my personal opinion. Maybe your opinion as well. Kyle was born in 2006, so he's 19. He's released 2 albums. Lighter charted at number 6 in his homeland, loads of singles before that, and he was part of Umami Tsunami, a boy band who were in MGP a couple of years ago. They didn't win. This was Lighter, made the final, qualifying in 8th place with 82 points in Basel back in May, and in the final 18th place with 89 points. Not brilliant, but by no means a disappointment. This had a sort of icy look to it as well. There were flames around the front of the stage, although it did warm up with brighter colours at times as well. He was also in some sort of warrior outfit, dancers with him, one doing backflips at one stage. Vocally he was okay, maybe a little bit exhausted in the final, but that's purely because he had sang this song so many times in the build-up to the final, through all the rehearsals and everything. Your voice is probably going to be shot to pieces. But he did a pretty good job. He looked fairly confident. This, to me, was bang average. Absolutely bang average pop. But I didn't mind it. He opened the grand final, which is not an easy thing to do. Credit where credit is due. This was fairly solid stuff in the end, albeit playing it very safe. But I suppose after finishing last the year before, it's probably a good idea to have something that is a little bit more accessible perhaps in the following year's competition. Anyway, this for me was my number 21 of this year's contest, which is quite low for me with regards to a Norwegian entry. And I'm going to put Lighter 2020, no, below that. Probably there for the time being. So there we go. This is my ranking of Norway's entries over the past decade. We have 2020 on top. Attention is my favourite, followed by A Monster Like Me. Third is 2023, Queen of Kings. Love that track. And that went down a storm in the Eurovision Village in Liverpool when I was there back in 2023. Then we have 2024, 2019, 2017, 2022, 2025, 2016, 2021, and then bottom of the pile is That's How You Write a Song by Alexander Rybak in 2018. But like I keep saying, a very rough ranking. Anyway, that's it. That is me covering Norway's entries at Eurovision over the past decade. I'm sure I forgot to mention loads of other bits and pieces, but never mind. I don't want these videos to be too long anyway. I'll be back with another, probably very similar video regarding another country in the near future. But until next time, take care of yourselves, stay safe, and bye for now.